Got it.
Are you
All
doing
right.
it on your end?
Yeah, you hear me?
Yeah, I can, but are you recording on that other platform?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, welcome to the Flipping Workshop. Today's Flipping Workshop is brought to you today by Onward, the greatest energy drink ever made for the post 40-year-old human. So if you have some Onward, load up because we're going to get after it today. Let's start off how we always start off. I don't know, Christy. I think we're going to have to move these to Fridays because I am in such a better mood and more excited mood.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
I know I don't even really need the Onward today, but I'm going to take it anyway. Who's got some wins? Let's start off with some wins.
Sir,
First one.
Spencer, you got to share your win, buddy. Come on.
No.
We're doing a property with Jimmy.
Boom. Flip key, right?
Yeah, not flip
Nice.
keys. Retail.
Nice. Who else got some wins?
I'm still executing my first deal with Jimmy and just did a podcast with Jimmy yesterday.
Well, by the way, I'm going to share BJ's podcast with you guys. The guy who wrote Getting It Done, which is a great book. How did you get him on your show, by the way?
My chief marketing officer reached out to him.
That was a great show. So I was having some anxiety that morning about getting things done, and the podcast calmed me down. Like I had anxiety.
His voice is like the most calming force in the world, I think.
Yeah, I wish he was my grandpa. And then Mike, we keep interrupting you. What do you got?
You good, man? Hey, I'm just finishing my first Berkey with you. I'm so excited. Like they've just got to get the city to give us a thumbs up, and you've got a tenant lined up. And Christy, thank you. Your communication has brought my blood pressure like way down. So you're amazing. Thank you.
My
Nice.
pleasure.
Which
And then
what
I had
street?
some conversations about private money, and my brother let me know he's got like $500,000 that needs to go to work. So we're gonna do it.
Booyah.
Nice.
That's a good set of wins to get started. All righty. So the flipping workshop. This is the first time we've done this. I'm kind of excited about it. Did anyone hear a few years ago? I think it was during COVID, but the Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he had like an American Gladiator type show where it's called the Titan Games. Did anybody ever see the Titan Games? Mike, you watched the Titan Games? It was the best, worst show ever. And I bring it up because at the end of every show, there was like a final obstacle. And The Rock would get them. And my kids always wanted me to try out for this show, but I really disappointed them by not going on. But The Rock would be like, he'd give them to the jabroni eye and he'd be like, all I want is all you got. And so I bring that up because on this workshop, me and Connor are going to spew everything we got to flipping a house. So you're going to see everything we know. If it's overwhelming, sorry, not sorry. If it's a little not that well organized, that one I will apologize. I did my best, but I was just like, oh my God, I want to share this. I want to share this. Show of hands. I know there have been people who have flipped houses by themselves before. Raise your hand. I know you've done it, BJ. Spencer has. Justin, you're new, right?
Yeah, newer to the group. Thanks
Nice.
for having me.
Are you flipping a house right now?
I did one earlier, just finished one this last year, and then just kind of getting in one with you. Yeah.
Sweet. So, you guys who do have some experience, I want to hear about your experience too. Say, hey, Jimmy, I think that's correct, or that's a nice hack. That's cute. That's smart. If you guys have ways to improve the process, we are also open ears. So let's get after it.
Jimmy, do you want to introduce Terry real quick to the group?
Oh, I do want to introduce Terry. Let me stop sharing. So we have a new person on our executive team, our leadership team. Terry is coming on to be our special projects coordinator. We'll probably evolve into something else, but right now we got a bunch of special projects we want to get done. So we get to throw, Terry's like, hey, I got a 4-pound bag of capacity to do things. So we're like, hey, Terry, welcome to the team. Here's 10 pounds. Get after it. Do you want to say hi and introduce yourself, Terry?
Sure. Hi, my name's Terry. Technically my first day is Monday, but I heard about this workshop and couldn't wait to just learn as much as I can about Breland, about Jimmy, and about the company. So I'm super happy to be here. My experience is largely in education, but I have a lot of operations experience as well. And so hoping to put all of that to use. And on the side, I have flipped 3 of my own homes. So
all right. You're currently flipping a house in Indiana right now, right?
Yep, we're in Terre Haute. We've got one right now.
Terre Haute, Indiana State, home of Larry Bird.
That's right.
I've always wanted a house in Terre Haute.
I've got one. Mhm.
Nice.
Yep.
I might be in the market.
Sweet.
All right. Now, where did my Chrome screen go? There we go. Okay. So the flipping workshop, we're going to go through the find. We're not going to do much on the fund because you guys did that. We did that last month at the private money workshop. We are going to spend a lot of time on the fix. We'll spend a little bit of time on the finding of a buyer or a tenant, but I'm really directing this training not away from turnkey and more to retail. Just because what I think you guys are owed is if you guys wanted to go do an active flip on your own, I think you're owed from the education you bought, everything that you would need to know. So everything we got, we're going to give you today. And we'll talk a little bit about management, not much because there's not much to talk about, and a little bit about the financing. But here's what you're going to leave with today. You're going to get the MLS tracker that I use every day to buy. I bet you I have bought 400 houses off this MLS tracker. I'm going to give you all the MLS searches you're going to need so that you can generate deals for yourself. I'm going to give you the spreadsheet we use when we analyze our flip profits because you guys are used to a rental portfolio. I don't think a rental portfolio really fits when you're analyzing, do I want to flip a house or not? So I'm going to give you our projected flip profit spreadsheet. I'm going to give you the SKU that we use for our flips right now. So when you get done with this call, you're going to be able to use the contractor expectations doc, the rehab standards doc, and the SKU list pricing and go, hey, Mr. General Contractor, here's everything I want to do. Here's the pricing. I need you to come back with a scope, but here's the exact equipment I would need are the exact cabinets, the exact lights, everything that we use for our Henry Ford real estate. You guys can take it as a base standard. You'll also get your rehab standards docs, which is great to give a general contractor in the beginning. We're going to get you the contractor contract we use, our property analyzer, and then the 0 to 1 flip process. I could not sleep last night because I built the 0 to 1 flip process. So here's what the 0 to 1 flip process cost me. We built this probably when we were 50 houses in, and we decided, hey, we were going to be a process-oriented business. And all I did was follow Susie around and say, and then what do you do next? And then what do you do next? And like, this was as close to we've ever gotten divorced by me trying to build this process. So I'm hoping I'm going to save a bunch of marriages today for people who want to flip houses by just giving them the straight up process. So what I'm going to give you today is something we started to build when Connor first came on. And so through a series of like 600 flips, if the process didn't give us what we want, me and Connor would sit in a room and just say, hey, this is the result we did not get. If we had done X, Y, and Z, we would have gotten the result we wanted, and we would just add that to the process. So now our flipping process is around 250 steps. I did not want to give that to you guys because it's a lot of tribal language and a lot of contingencies, and I just think it would confuse you. But Connor, do you want to come introduce yourself? Sorry, I didn't have you do that earlier.
You're good. So my name is Connor Doherty. I am the Coordination of Action Officer for Vreeland Capital. I started with Jimmy back in 2019. I work mostly with the kind of the behind the scenes stuff on the acquisitions, the actual flipping, the passing to obviously the leasing once those property ready are passing to the agents if they are getting sold. And just basically work to make sure that particularly handoffs, but any kind of inter-entity operations are going smoothly, and that clients demands and needs are being met.
And then the process you're going to get has really been built by Connor over the last 4 years. So, but it will save your marriage if you want to be a house flipper. Some of you got OGs. You guys are already familiar with this little first part. I want to go through the numbers, but I want to set the frame for everybody about the 80% that this whole real estate world revolves around. So for a retail flip, no matter what like when we're wholesaling a house, it doesn't matter what. I just know that I have to get somebody into it all in at 70 to 85%. And retail, rental, all around revolves around that 80%. So a flipper wants to be in a house at 80% of the value of the house, because the margin between what you're all in and that 20% margin, that's going to be your profit. And what's interesting is that when you do a retail flip, a lot of times the down payment for the buyer is that 20%. So their cash for the down payment goes to you as the profit. I just always thought that was kind of interesting. BJ and Spencer, guys who have done flips before, like when you guys started the project, how did you guys say, hey, this was the profit margin I wanted?
I had a couple mentors that gave me a calculator and I plugged the numbers in and they said, since it's your first one, they usually went with a 15 ROI, 15%. And they're like, since it's your only one, it's a larger deal. You can kind of choose your number and what profit you want to make and you're going to learn off it. So we were at about a 10% ROI. but it was ended up selling for 1.1 million. So
It's not a bad day. So what about BJ Kramer? Are you still around?
Yeah, I'm here. Similar model. There's the model we were trying to do was 250 acquire, 250 construction, sell for 750, and then out of 750, you've got your soft costs and everything. So you end up about 50% of that. So 125 on a 750 was the target.
Gotcha. So yeah, it's construction. So I think most people, bigger numbers, you can not be as like $1 million house, a 10% margin is pretty sweet. So you don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to pass up $100,000 profit because I was on some workshop with some dude with St. Louis who said I only do a deal with a 20% margin. This is just a number to get your guys kind of mind around the concept, but it is not a hard no. We flip lower margin projects all the time, depending on speed and things of that nature. So I want to do some math just to kind of get everybody on the same thing. We're going to go over the Mao. And we're going to go over good Maos, not a bad Mao, like a murdering dictator like Chairman Mao. We are going to talk about the max allowable offer. So what is the max allowable offer? It is the after repair value minus the projected profit, which we're going to call 20% for the purposes of this exercise, minus the rehab. That is your max allowable offer as you're acquiring a house to even start the flip. So let's do a $200,000 house example with a 40K rehab. So Spencer, you get to play along with me today. If it's a $200,000 house with the math we're working with today, what's the desired profit?
let's see here.
So $200,000 house, you're desiring a 20% margin. So what would your desired profit be?
Would be 40,000.
40 G's. Yes, sir. So we believe the house will be worth $200,000 when the work's done. We're looking for a $40,000 profit. And then for this example's sake, we know it's a $40,000 rehab. So if you're offering on the MLS or to another wholesaler, what's going to be your max allowable offer right now?
120.
Yes, sir. So we do a lot of projects here in St. Louis, but it's the most simple arithmetic and simple math. So you guys have seen this before. If it's a turnkey deal, the turnkey operator is still looking for a 20% margin. Turnkey buyer brings 20% down. There's that 80-20 again. 80% is financed to the bank. All future gain goes to the buyer. The whole wholesale world revolves around these numbers as well. The wholesaler has to buy the house for cash so low that the end flipper can still be in at 80%. So Harold, when my team's scouring the street and I'm either looking for tired landlord deals or Berkey deals for you, where do I have to be below to run a profitable wholesaling business?
Where do you have to be below what? In terms of, usually the wholesale fees, what, about 10, 15 grand or something typically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got another, if you're at 120, that means you got to be the wholesaler, your guys got to pick it up somewhere around 105-ish, right?
Yeah, 100. So when you guys see wholesale deals, just know that they're baking in 15 to 20 grand. If you're not making that per deal, you're going to really struggle as a wholesaler because you're not going to be able to afford the marketing the next month.
Yeah.
So I just make this point, everybody's chasing the 80% deal. So there's 3 direct methods to acquire these deals. You go direct to seller like wholesalers do, MLS, or you go to other wholesalers. So I'm going to give you guys the quick and dirty, if you want to do this on your own, how you would do it. Personally, if you're going to do it I'm going to give the frame of a professional, like we do in St. Louis, semi-active and then active. Like, hey, you're determined to do it all on your own. I'm going to give you like 3 different ways I think you would go 0 to 1. And so quite frankly, I still believe the MLS is the best place to go, but we'll get into that later. So wholesaling, we do it out of iBuySTL. We text, we cold call, we mail, we do TV, we have testimonials, YouTube, and like the way you get deals, very, very rarely do we have wham, bam, thank you, ma'am deals where a person walks in the house, comes out with a contract. We're trying to increase that, but it's all of this. However you're going to acquire a house, its fortune is in the follow-up to include the MLS. I'd say 40% of our MLS deals we get after some other buyer backs out. I'm going to do another wholesaling workshop later in the year, so I'm not going to spend that much time on it, but wholesaling should only be formed by professional idiots who are crazy. It is a hustle and a grind, and you have to love the madness. And it's really about math when it comes to wholesaling. We know for every 100 leads we get, we got to convert 40% of those to appointments. And then we got to close on 25% of the appointments. So it's a simple thing of math. We know we have to buy X amount of leads, which would lead to Y amount of contracts, which leads to Z amount of profit. But it's straight up math and monitoring. And it's with all of this, it's consistency is the key. But I wanted to go as fast as I could over wholesaling because we're going to do a full workshop. Now, my man Harold, he always gets this picture for the MLS because he is a highly performing agent out in California. Harold, do you get investors in California to say, hey, can you put an automated search for me together?
Yeah, sometimes. I have certain ones. Like if I run across stuff, I go, oh, I've already got investors that I know that'll do exactly that, and I just turn it on to them, and I go, and they'll use me to sell it. That's for me. It's a double dip.
And are you annoyed by these type of requests? Or are you like, oh, whatever, maybe I'll get lucky?
No, because I'll make money on both sides.
Yeah, and you're like the mentor and the guy, right?
I'm in the middle of the transaction, so I have it way better than the wholesaler does because I make money on the sale. I make money when he buys it, make money when he sells it. Whereas a wholesaler only makes a deal once.
So let's say Mike here in Salt Lake, like how would you advise him going about? Oh wait, Mike is an agent. Mike, how would you advise an investor to go about approaching an agent for this type of relationship?
I think it's kind of market driven. I've had several that I've worked with that were investors, and we just set up, certain things like, distressed property key phrases in the MLS that just automatically shoot over to them. But like a year and a half ago when interest rates were 3%, it wasn't a very friendly atmosphere for those guys because, you're one of 20 offers and you want to be at your 80% and everyone's going to be 20% over. So very market driven, I think.
Okay. Okay. So the main thing is I want people to get is like, you guys like these type of inquiries.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yep.
So very easy. And then the other point I want to make, this is very easy to achieve, especially if it's a motivated agent. And as I'm going through this MLS stuff, guys, if you have anything to add, please just pop off. So what I do on a daily basis, and Terry, you're going to be a big part of this. It's what I call robo offers. Like I have a discipline that I will not stop searching other wholesalers or other MLS till I get in 5 offers a day. 5 offers a day. I don't know the exact math, but however it happens, I've been able to buy 100 houses off the MLS for the last 4 years. But the discipline is 5 offers a day. And so I did this years ago. I know the property type I want. I know I want single family residential. I know I want it in St. Louis. I know the tenant market, as you can guess. And I know what type of neighborhood I want, and I know the metrics. So if you're going to do this in your local market, you do need to find the homework. Say, hey, is this a retail flip I want to do? Or is this a potential rental or BRRRR that I want to keep? Or maybe I want to create a turnkey for somebody else in my own market. Something of that nature. But here would be the base search I would have everybody do. 2 to 4 bedrooms, 1 to 3 bathrooms, 800 to 25 square feet, price range 0 to 200. Now, Spencer lives in California. He was willing to go up to that 7-figure mark. That's awesome, by the way. BJ lives in New Jersey. So BJ, what's 200K going to get you in Jersey?
Something in the Ghetto.
Yes. Probably something in St. Louis would cost 40 grand. And so this is like
a townhouse in downtown Camden for you.
Is Camden pretty rough?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're gonna have to figure out the zip codes that you want. So like retail flips, we love going down in South County of St. Louis. So we have certain retail zips that we're hitting all the time, and then we have certain rental zips. So that's whatever market you're in, you're gonna have to do that homework. Take a screenshot of this right here. Mike, if I said, hey, I need you to run these searches for me, would you be annoyed or would be like, man, this guy knows what he wants?
The nice thing about it is you just have to set it up one time. So, it's really easy. You do it once, then it just goes. So, and
you're not going to do it. You're going to give it to your real estate assistant, right?
Right. And then the nice thing is that I can copy and paste to anyone else. So,
yeah. And so this is what I check daily, guys. I have the bring all offer search, TLC search, investor search. This hits my email every day. And then like Wiggins here, this is another agent in town. When you actually do buy a deal from somebody, you create a search to start watching all their listings too. For example, Jimmy E. Barton, I buy a bunch of stuff from him. So I want to always, if you buy a deal from a certain agent, Paul Murad, start tracking what agent you're buying from. Like if you guys have heard me, there's a huge hedge fund selling off deals in St. Louis, and Paul Murad's their agent. So I bet you I bought half the houses I bought off the MLS from him last year. So that's a kind of a nice, easy hack. Does anybody need more time to get a screenshot of this? And I'll also give this to you guys in your takeaways. And then this will hit your inbox every day. And you got to remember, so getting a house is about consistency, and it's about, long obedience in the same direction. So Kiyosaki says you analyze 100 houses, you walk 10, you buy one. Connor, do you think, how many houses do we walk? Do you think we buy? Do you think it's 25%?
So the last number I pulled, I think 2023, it was like 6.5 houses we walked to 1 buy.
Okay, what is that percentage wise?
Somewhere around 15.
Okay, so like even like the pros guys, like we'll put in the work, and like we're probably better than 1 to 10 just because our buying criteria is so tight and we got a little more experience at buying at high numbers. So the next thing when we're doing our numbers, it's the ARV. How are you guys going to find the ARV if you're not an agent? Harold and Mike, what would you do if you weren't an agent? How do you tell people to find the value of the house?
They usually just call me and I tell them.
And will you run a comp right there?
I mean, I can pull a comp pretty darn quick. So yeah.
Okay. Software wise, if you don't have an agent as nice as Mike or Harold, propstream.com is a great place. You can get better than Zillow approximations of value, but not as good as say Mike or Harold. But propstream.com if you want to really get into this. And then Mike, you agree with this? The only way to really get an accurate comp is to go on the MLS and look for the 5 most closest sales.
Yep.
And now here's a hack I've been using since the beginning. And then Harold and Mike, tell me what you guys think about this. But before I was an agent myself, I was always listed as an agent for the guy who would do my deals for me. And so I had his MLS access. So like right now, Connor's not an agent, but Connor has MLS access through our agents because Connor's listed to his assistant. So Harold, where would you stand if you had an investor say, hey, can I be your assistant?
My assistant? I mean, you can put them in and you can add them. I mean, there is a way to do that. You have to pay a certain amount in order to make that happen in the MLS, I guess is what it is.
Yeah.
And you could do that. Yeah. From that standpoint.
So it's just a hack, guys. I don't know if you got to find the right agent who'd be cool with it, but it is out there, and that's how you will get the most accurate. That is how you will get the most accurate approximation of values when it comes to rentals. And then, quite frankly, I found this as we're analyzing more retail flips. But the master formula in the Midwest is the Zillow comp plus 100 times 115. So even a $300,000 house or something with the Zillow algorithm, where Zillow is going to still say that's a $2,600 rent. So the MLS tracker I'm going to give you has this formula built into it. But for whatever reason, Zillow rent plus 100 times 115 is a decent approximation of value. So what you do, and I'm going to show you the spreadsheet I use. You're going to copy and paste the spreadsheet I'm about to give you guys. You're going to check it twice a week, and then you're just going to keep making offers until you get deals, because deals are simply a function of offers. Like I showed you with wholesaling. I know if we have 40 appointments, we're going to put out 15 offers. We're going to get 10 of those offers, and that's going to be 10 deals. But it's just like Moneyball. You get more people on base, the more runs you score. So this is now Connor wants me to stop doing this, but quite frankly, I have so much fun. I can't stop. I'm almost addicted to this. So this is the same spreadsheet. I bet you I have bought 400 deals off this spreadsheet. So my MLS searches come into the email. I have a VA in the Philippines who puts the address in, date added, what list it came from, if it's a new listing or back on the market. I like back on the market because I offer on those no matter what, because I feel like the seller's in pain and he just wants to get rid of the house. So I always lowball offer on back on the market. And then Connor made this awesome. What did you do here, Connor, to make this color work?
Conditional formatting.
So conditional formatting that if it's bigger than 40, it's a different color and it attracts my eye to it. And so the way I look at it is like I'm assuming a 20K rehab and a 20K profit just to get in the game. So you can see the math in here is, I don't know if you can see this guy blowing up, but it's the rent's estimate plus 100 times 115 is what I believe the ARV will be. And then the spread is what I think the ARV is minus the asking price. And so if that spread's bigger than 40, I'm most likely going to offer on it. Does that make sense? BJ, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to so I got the same thing for you guys. I'm going to throw this link in the chat for you guys. It is viewer only. So if you need it, just make a copy, but it's the same formula in. So all you would do is set up your MLS searches, put the asking price in, the Zillow, the rent estimate. You are an assistant or a VA. If you get the bigger spread, that's when you know how to offer. So here it comes in the chat. And then all the giveaways I'll give you guys in one document at the end of the day. Any questions on how to set up a Robo MLS search to find the deal? All righty, cool. Like I said, to get a deal this way, it's long obedience in the same direction. Now you guys could take that approach, or since there's so much social media going on in this group because of the private lender workshop, I'm assuming occasionally somebody's going to, hey, I got a deal. I don't know what to do with it. Maybe somebody should flip it. And so now we're going to move into, since you found the deal, here's how you would now go to work, finding the contractors, doing the work, all the hairy stuff. The other, one more method on finding deals with wholesalers, go to whatever market you want to go into, go to Facebook. Like we just went into Little Rock. The first thing we did was go into our Little Rock Facebook group and get on everybody's buyers list. So facebook.com, type in your real estate investing town, sign up for every investing group, every wholesaler, get on their buyers list. Like Connor, how many deals do we pick up because we randomly check email of other wholesalers?
Probably like maybe 10%.
Yeah, but it's like we don't have a great relationship with these guys. It's not like we're talking to them every day, but we do check our email and we'll see the right deal. So friend every wholesaler, go to their website, get added to their buyers list. So that's how you find the deal. So now we're going to get into actually where the real brain damage happens. Like me personally, I love finding the deal. There's nothing more exciting to me than finding the deal. Once we get into fix the deal, guess this is where you show up, right, Connor?
Yep.
So we're going to give you guys, we're going to show you what we do. So you get the kind of the purview of how a professional flipper handles it. So the softwares we use Buildertrend, Podio. We got project managers running around the city, and SKU List. Now, the SKU List is going to be absolutely the same. How we evaluate a house, we're going to give you what we did when we first started. We're going to do the 0 to 1 as simple as it possibly can be. But, we're trying to do Henry Ford real estate, so we try to repeat the same house as often as we can. Now, it's different types of retail. You're not going to necessarily be able to do that. But, we have a accountability chart. We got like 10 people on the rehab team. This is how we figure out our timelines. But the best projects take about 4 weeks. The GC cost is about $500 a day. Connor, can you explain how we use the GC cost to plan out the projects?
Yeah, so just taking that overall cost of what obviously is going to get charged, take that amount by 500. That gives you the number of days that GC will need to be working on that project. Generally, that's obviously calendar days, and then you just convert it to business days, and that gives you, a good overall timeline.
And so when you're first starting out, this is important because if you have a 40, this is a metric we've tracked for 2 years, and we started at 500. We've gotten faster and faster and faster that now our guys are up to $700 a day. But if you have a $40,000 rehab, like Spencer, when you did your flip, how did you project how long it would take?
We were all brand new. We didn't really project. We just found a GC that kind of came through luck and just pushed him. We asked him, initially what his schedule would be. He said 6 to 8 weeks. I think it ended up taking like 12. But my wife, she's managed projects before, so she kind of took the head on that. She designed it and managed it, and she kind of pushed him along. So
gotcha. So especially for you high detail people, you're going to want like a number. So I recommend you start with $500 for a day. So if you have a $40,000 rehab, that might take as long as 80 business days. So this will also help out you plan how much interest you're going to be paying. But start at 500. As you get better, you'll be able to deploy more dollars per day. So this passive plus, maybe you're flipping remotely. Maybe you're not doing it like actively in your own town. You don't need Buildertrend. You'll do it on Google Sheets. You'll find a general contractor and you'll get a SKU list that you borrow from me. And you guys know my buddy, Mark Delatorre. guess where I got my SKU list? It's a direct copy from Mark's SKU list. So SBD Homes and Breland Capital are flipping the same house in Kansas City and St. Louis with the same SKU list. Instead of a 10-person accountability chart, what you'll need when you're doing it like passively in another city is you'll need you, a general contractor, and a project manager who will manage the carpenters, the trades, the electrician, roofer, HVAC, and plumber. If you're going to work through a GC and not do it yourself, you just need to expect to kiss a lot of frogs. So if you're going from, you kind of smiled there, Spencer, would you agree with that? BJ, you do this professionally in the commercial world. What are your thoughts?
You need a good manager. I've hired superintendents just to be independent of the general contractor, instead of kind of GCing it ourselves and then having that superintendent act as the GC on my behalf.
Kind of like an owner's rep?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So here is a takeaway we want to give you guys. So if you're, when you meet with a contractor, the first thing they're going to ask you is like, okay, you're a flipper. What do you expect of me? And then now you're going to be able to get this document and say, this is exactly what we expect from you. And then how do I make this bigger? So this is whenever, Connor, you want to kind of explain this document?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up on my end because that is a little small for me.
You want to share the screen?
Yeah, let me give me 1 second.
Okay.
So this is a document that we have tweaked and modified and built over time. So we didn't really have a good expectations doc, I would say, to begin with.
And then
So-
tell them what it was like when we didn't have a good expectations doc to begin with.
I don't know how much you want me to reveal, but I know when we first started, we would come up with a number, which we probably will get into that a little bit, and basically say, here's the money, make this property look good, and then we would walk and just give them feedback kind of throughout it. Wasn't best for relationships and things like that. So, we've gotten a lot better. Applications, those are just the systems we use. Obviously the tax documents, these can get you hemmed up, or insurance documents, make sure they have all that kind of stuff squared away. Biggest thing contractors want to know is how they get paid. What do they have to do to get paid? So that's kind of first and foremost. And then depending on what your kind of expectations you lay out, there is such a thing as we call like a dull list. So things that may not necessarily appear on every scope, but things that we would expect a general contractor to do once they go through there, whether it's listed or not specifically listed. Just do it by items of the different property. Here's a little note saying what they can set the thermostat to. Obviously, you want to keep utilities bills down. That's something you plan for as well. We also have some things on there, third-party inspection repairs, because that's another part of our business. But really, how they get paid, what are some of the additional items? We also have this listed on the actual scope. We send them as well. But this is kind of just one of the, like I said, general expectation stocks that we will send to them.
Connor, can you go down a little bit to the tax docs? I'll go up a little more. So this, guys, you cannot not do. Make sure you get a W-9. Make sure they have a work comp certificate, because I think part of my job is to tell you the catastrophic things that can happen. So here's a catastrophic thing that can happen. If something happens, let's say you don't do this homework, and a laborer gets hurt on the job and the GC does not have work comp, guess who's liable for that work comp claim? You are. That's a bad day. And so then make sure they have general liability certificate of insurance and then a signed company insurance waiver. So this is like little homework, paperwork stuff you got to do that protects you against catastrophic loss. It's kind of like setting up your LLC when you buy a rental.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add, and it's built actually into our payment process, but they are essentially signing lien waivers throughout the course of the project. So when they get sent to approve a purchase order before they get paid, they have to sign a lien waiver for the work they've done up at that point, so that if they do try and put a lien on anything, we're covered as well.
And so what do you think this covers, Connor? 50 mistakes we made?
Yeah, I mean, everything with every system we have or every document, it's been built by Payne. So we probably felt this experience at some point, so we had to put it in there.
So do not flip a house without erasing our logo or use our logo, I don't care, and sending this to your contractor. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Now here is the 0 to 1 process is a ton of value. But if you do want to flip a house and you're like, let me ask you this. So Spencer, your wife was she's like an interior designer, right?
interior designer. She worked for a architect that also was a general contractor. So she kind of did it all, but from a design perspective.
If she didn't, let me, Terry, when you're flipping a house, how do you know which material you wanted to use? Oh, you're muted, Terry.
I think she's saying her sound cut out.
Oh, gotcha. So I don't even know how when we first started, Connor, how we figured out like what material we were going to use. Like Justin, when you flip a house, how do you know what material you're going to use?
Well, I thankfully did mine with Spencer, so we had his wife. But you really don't know, but you want to look at the new trends and what's kind of looking kind of to the buyer's eye to help it, get off market quicker.
Gotcha. So what we're sharing with you guys right now is a base so that you could go to Home Depot, you can go to a contractor and say, here's what we want to use. Now, this SKU is more for a flip in the Midwest. I don't know if it's going to have the big baller California finishes. You're going to need someone like Spencer's wife. But for your base retail flip, this is what you can hand a contractor. So this is more general. This is a reiteration of general requirements. But so if you guys want a cost-effective LVP, there's the SKU number right here. And this is what we send contractors so they know how to go to Home Depot and exactly what to buy. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing on the call, but you guys can read through this. And if you're like, hey, what flooring am I going to need? That's cost effective. Well, the Core Luxe, what paint? Perfect Greige. So I hope if you guys do take the leap, this is the value add. That's the vanity we always use. These are the pools we always use. Like when the new contractor, Connor, how much time do you think this saves them?
Yeah, I mean, right now, what we send to them now even has like the links to it. So if they do have any questions, they can just refer to a document. So it cuts down a lot on back and forth, I would say.
Okay. So when you're meeting a new contractor, when you're thinking about starting the project, there's those two documents that you're going to leave here with today. And then is this what you were talking about, Connor, the materials and pricing sheet?
Yeah, so this is kind of a more that's a different one, but this is kind of the next iteration of it. So this is actually linked to our scope building software. So to kind of break it down, but as we're putting the scope together, it's automatically pulling the numbers and the costs, both for material and labor from that document. And
why don't you bring it up and show people how we do the eval and create the scope?
Yeah. So I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. So because we are obviously active flippers and do this, we've created some systems to expedite this. So just stop me if anything. I'll do my best to kind of keep it simple. But this is really kind of our main SKU document right now. So we have all the cost codes. Again, this would be much simpler for you. Obviously, you're doing it. The website where it's linked to. As they are going through and writing that scope, it's automatically tallying these numbers. We review these about once a quarter, make sure prices have not gone up or gone down. And then you want me to talk through, Jimmy, kind of how we actually go through and write that scope?
Yeah.
Okay. So
and then we're not showing this. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. When you're starting out, you do not need this. This SKU list would be nice because you have the links right to Home Depot, so you can order everything you want. But we're just going to kind of show you how we do it, and then I think it'll give better context and how we broke it down into a 0 to 1 value for you guys.
Yeah. So like I said, this is all linked to it. If I were to say if you're starting out general, simplest way, list out your locations and then do your scope by room. Within each room, depending on what kind of room it is, there's going to be certain things in every room. So if it's a living room and it's a standard room, we have certain things. I'll just go to the view one. So we have, sorry. Yep. 1 second. So basically as the scope writer is going through each room, he is adding things to that. Let's try this one more time. So living room. So basically we're checking, hey, does it need to have any safety items? Does it need paint, vent, light switch, outlet items, outlet lighting items, window items? That's the same for pretty much every room. So those are things that you're going to be checking, adding those to the scope. If you are doing things like a kitchen, obviously that's going to have different things in there as well. So you're looking not only at your general things like paint, windows, floors, you might have to also have a line item there for kitchen cabinets, countertops, cabinet pulls, anything involved with the kitchen plumbing as well, appliances. But then you see kind of these general items. So going room by room, there's general things for every room. Also things like kitchens and bathrooms, there's going to be some specific items in there. What do those things cost, material and labor wise? Again, going back to this document, figuring in what the labor time is, what the cost will be for it. And that's the best I can say in a short period is just kind of go by room and start adding it all together.
So Connor, our guys have an iPad with this smart board up, and they're walking room by room, building a scope by room, right?
Yeah, and it's basically everything when they get to that room, they just say, hey, does it need window stuff? Yes or no. Does it need baseboards? Yes or no. Does it need paint? Yes or no. And then, like I said, now you can do this manually on like a Google Sheet that will add it for you. And then obviously if you get more sophisticated, you can have a software do it for you. But that's essentially it, just going room by room.
And now a lot of people bought bird keys. They see the end result of the scope. Can you show what the end scope looks like?
Yes.
And now the scope is very important to the contractor, so he can tell his guy, and like we hang these on the front door of every project so that their guy can go room by room, list by list, and see what they have to do in that room. And then there's no gray area, because in the beginning we had a bunch of gray area. We were like, make this house look nice. And the contractor's version of look nice and ours was not the same. So now we're very specific, so they know what they're supposed to do in every location.
Yeah, so this is a retail flip that we're doing. So we give the overall cost per room. If this were to be an outside owner, let's say, the overall cost per room, that's kind of a good way to look at it. And then same thing like I showed before, you just go room by room. So actually I was just talking to the contractor at this property yesterday, and he had questions on the scope. And basically he says, hey, I got questions on the kitchen. You know, we pulled that up and, you know, we talked through it. But this is basically what now I think the one that we send out doesn't necessarily have costs on it. But you'll see, hey, kitchen cabinet, what are we doing? We're painting. Countertop, what are we doing? We're replacing. Cabinet poles, what are we doing? We're replacing the poles. Just basically, and that's really it, basically for each room. You can just see exactly what they're doing. Now there's a lot of dullest things associated with this. You know, obviously if the countertop is completely terrible and it just says spray, obviously that means they're gonna have to clean it. So there's obviously some this is a granite countertop because it's a retail. So it's this, and then there's, again, that's why that general expectations doc is important, because there's a lot of items you don't want to have to list every room you're going to clean cobwebs. So the general expectations will cover all the common sense stuff. This is more of the actual stuff that's going to require skill and, you know, bringing in, you know, specific people for. Does that work, Jimmy? Does that?
Yeah,
make
that
sense?
was great, Connor. Because like if you guys don't have that dull list, because here's what you're always going to be toggling between, like a contractor being like, oh wait, that wasn't on the scope, like, so I'm not going to do it. But then we're like, no, look at your general expectations. We're not going to put that on the scope because it's common sense that you need to do that. Any comments or questions on the scope? All righty. So you guys are leaving with a SKU list that you could use at Home Depot tomorrow to start buying material. Now, our friends Spencer and Justin, I don't believe you guys live the common experience. In my experience flipping houses, my first 5, I made a little bit of money on, and 2 of them, I paid a lot of tuition on. So kudos to you guys. But if your idea is I'm only going to flip one house, I don't think you should even probably start, because the real value is everything you learn in the first one. Like, Justin and Spencer, you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, no, there was definitely a lot of luck involved with ours that we saw after the fact. So like you said, there were so many things that we didn't know going into it. We were just kind of a do it type people. And I did construction. I framed before I was a fireman. Like I said, my wife had a lot of experience. We had some financial backing from Justin and his wife. So we're like, let's just do it. And we analyzed the property. It worked. And like I said, we didn't really know we knew the city, but we didn't know that this one little track it was in was so highly sought after. I don't think the wholesaler knew. So we got lucky in that aspect of it. We got lucky in the timing of the market right when we sold it. There was a lot of luck that could have definitely went the other way.
And I would argue that the cash is great that you guys made, but the real value was what you learned.
100%.
So if something happens and it's not the greatest flip ever, your first one out the gate, like, don't worry about it. Because there are real estate horror stories out here. Here's the first house I flipped when I got out of the Army. You guys who've been around a while know this, but we didn't know, we had no timeline, no SKU list. We had a contractor who really wasn't good. And like, I didn't talk to my mom for 6 months because of this house. So I hope this workshop, it saves marriages and it makes sure no one went through not talking to a family member for 6 months, just because we both didn't know what we were doing. And we're both stubborn Irish people who, instead of being open-minded learners, we decided to tear each other apart. And then remember, time is money. So the longer the projects go, the more you're going to pay in interest. So as you're planning out, use the $500 a day to how to calculate how much interest you expect to pay. And then I would say, work in, don't expect a flip to be done in under 4 months. For those of you in the cash flow heaven, you guys have seen this before. We updated it for 2024, but you guys will have a copy of this. But this is a much simpler Google Sheet version of what Connor just showed you. So what we do is we base it off the Mayo based off the rent, and then you put the square feet of the house in, the square feet of the roof, and all that is a function of it's 40% bigger than the roof. You put your ARV in there, and then as you take this, and in cash flow heaven, it was easier to explain because we would have people go through the house and get their own rehab estimate. But let's say it needs a roof. Let's say it needs gutters. Let's say it also needs a stack. Wow, this house stinks. It needs a repipe. Yada, does this make sense how this works? You guys will just walk through the house, say if it needs it, put a 1 there, and then the cost starts building up. If it needs a new kitchen, what did I do there? So if it's just, if it's not a full kitchen, it's another $2,500. So you get to the end of this, you see what your initial budget is, you know what your ARV is, you know what your profit is. And so we probably did 200 flips off this sheet. So we're giving the same sheet to you guys, so you guys can actually run a flip by doing this. But all you're going to do is send your evaluator through and mark a 1 if it needs painting, mark a 1 if you need drywall, doors, windows, garbage disposal. And so this is what we started with before we started doing a bunch of volume and wanted to start making it a little easier by automating some technology. So you guys are leaving with this too. If you ever need this, Connor, you kind of already hit how you went through the deal analyzer, right?
Well, just to round it out. So yeah, so we don't use that particular analyzer anymore. Right now we use, again, basically a software where it's built so that really you don't have to have much real estate knowledge or construction knowledge. You basically just say what's bad in that property, and then it's just connected to a sheet that then calculates all the formulas for you. Again, if you're doing this probably, one or two at a time, we analyze, I think this week alone, we've analyzed like 8 or 9 properties. And it takes a 30-minute walkthrough and then a 15-minute confirmation to confirm the numbers on that deal. So we've just taken the same concept as that, but just automated it more so.
You think it's worth going through real quick?
I can show you kind of what that might look like eventually.
Let me clarify this, guys. There's an initial eval that, like, we see a house on the MLS, we do an initial eval with that spreadsheet or what Connor's about to show you. That eval, once we have the house under contract, we have 10 days due diligence. At that point, we send somebody who's more experienced in to write a scope to go exactly through the room to make sure the initial eval and the scope are within, what's our tolerance level, Connor, 10 to 15%?
10%.
If our eval and our final scope are within 10% of each other, we move forward. If it's not, we hit the renegotiate button.
Yeah. So just some advancements that we've taken. We have things that you look at prior to the property. I want to know before setting one out, is it in a flood zone? Are there open permits? You can check with the municipality, check if it's an HOA. We don't like things near railroad tracks or on septics. Couple other just admin pieces of information. Is the house occupied, vacant? Obviously you guys will know that. Really the meat and potatoes of this is basically everything you saw before that was just putting in ones. Now it's kind of just built down more into questions. So what is the state of the roof, siding, driveway, exterior doors, landscaping, fencing? It's built that you can just go and basically answer questions. Don't need a bunch of knowledge. That spits out a report here in Podio. Consolidates all that information, gives us, what we're going to have to pay a GC essentially to be able to do that. And then obviously what we would charge to an owner if we're going to be managing it, managing that rehab for them, which if you're not doing it yourself, you're going to obviously have to pay a project manager or a general contractor for. That shouldn't be any surprise. And then we just have a series of different calculations based off of, hey, if it's a turnkey property, here's what we think it'd sell for. If we think it's a retail, based upon the formulas, and then that spits out basically various different Mayos, which just give us different options for what we would want to do with that property, depending on what we could actually get it at.
So if you guys were doing it in your own market, you would get a house from a wholesaler MLS. You'd have a rough idea what you think the rehab is from pictures. You or your evaluator would go out to the house, run through that little Google sheet. If that Google sheet supports your offer, you stay in there, you get it under contract. At that point, you start sending GCs and the professionals through to get real bids. And so you're under a time crunch. Harold, in California, if it's retail, what's the average? We always do 10 days due diligence. What's
Yeah.
most common in the real estate market, due diligence wise?
Yeah, 10 to 14 days is typical time frame.
Yeah, so you got to have that scope ready to go in 10 to 14 days, so you got to get everybody out there, give you guys your bids. Now, you don't have to have your HVAC guy if you look at the HVAC and it's like 3 years old. But anything you're worried about, you got to get people out in that 2-week period. And that is really the essential timeline to make sure nothing catastrophic happens.
Yeah.
The analyzer, we went over that. The analyzer becomes a scope. Now here is something we made a mistake on as rookies. And like everybody in this group is very honest, very trusting. So I could see you guys making this mistake, but never, ever, 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 ever pay the contractor 100% of their bill up front. I think I've had 3 deals in my career where I did that and the dude completely ran off, and then boom, that's a straight loss. There's no way to get that money back. And so what you're worried about is how to take the money and run. And then if you've done Bird Keys with us, you guys understand the 4 phases of a rehab. There's several reasons why we do 4 phases of a rehab, but the one reason we do that is 1, to get the contractor to move faster, and 2, make sure he knows when he's going to get paid. It's very clear when he or she's going to get paid and what they have to do to get paid. So the GC, how it works is he's got a crew of dudes. These guys, believe it or not, are probably not the best savers. And on Friday night, they want to get paid every 2 weeks. And my best assumption is that the cash they're getting paid does not last that long. So if the GC doesn't pay them every Friday, there's like serious repercussions. And so what'll happen, this happens to us all the time with GCs. A new G will be like, hey, Jimmy, it's Friday. Where's my check? And I'm like, hey, I don't care if it's Friday. Where's my phase completion? And they're like, what do you mean? And we're like, check the contractor expectations doc. We don't pay you based on time. We pay you based on completion of phases. So we break it up into 4 phases. We give them, this is what I recommend you guys do when you're starting. Phase 1 is demo to max. Get everything cleaned out. When we start a rehab, we like it to be like a new box. So all the max, the roof, the AC, the plumbing, all of that, we like it to get done before we start doing anything else. So phase 1 is demo, get all the big line item expenses out. Phase 2 is then all the flooring and paint. Phase 3, once the flooring and paint's in, knock out all the kitchen and bath. Once the kitchens and bath ends, it's really finishes and inspection. So I would pay them 30% up front to get started on the project. I'd pay them 30% for flooring and after flooring and paint, the next 15 for kitchens and baths. And finally, even when they're like, I'm done, pay me, do not pay them the final amount until they've done the hardest part of any rehab is the last 10%. So a lot of times what a contractor will do is he'll get it 90% finished and then leave. And so you want to leave enough meat on the bone so that they still have skin in the game to finish out the most painful part of the project. So us now, with our trusted contractors, we give them 45% up front. Then we give them 15% after phase 2, 20 after phase 3. And then since we want phase 4 done and we know how hard it is to get that last part done, we save 20% to the end. The other reason phases are important, if you guys are using hard money, the bank is going to pay you based on phase completion as well. So a $200,000 house that you buy for 120 and a 40K rehab, the bank's only going to give you 85% of that. And so what is that? So you gotta start the project with 30 grand of your own money, and then whatever hard money lender, generally hard money lenders work in 4 phases too. So you're gonna have to come up with the first 10K of your own cash, show the bank that it's done at the phase payment, and then send the pictures to them. So that's another huge reason why running in phases is so important. And then, all right, I'm going to move on to, let's move on to the 0 to 1 checklist. So what I built last night, I felt very inspired to do this. This is an absolute 0 to 1 checklist of anything you would have to do to flip a house. Connor, you want to share the screen and show them our process street to flip a house? Show them the turnkey process.
Yeah. I do want to add one more thing. So just to show you that. So I just picked a random property. So you can see this is phase 1 picks, demo and trash. Here's his phase 2's picks, paint and flooring. Here's his phase phase 3 picks, kitchen and bath. There's a change order in there, obviously, and then here's this phase 4. So what I filtered out was our walks on those properties. So if we walked it and there were things not done yet, especially for the phase 4, there's a big walk that happens before that. That phase 4 is going to show all those things that popped up in that inspection to show that he actually passed that inspection. You said pull up the turnkey process?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just really show them how many steps it is.
So, I mean, a lot of these things are particular because we have a lot of connected entities, but starts with us getting a house under contract and then basically ends with, us actually, selling that property. But if you count just those minus these down here, we're at 200 steps, essentially.
Go down to all the iBuy steps.
These are just alerts if it's an iBuy. I built these in.
Gotcha. So, if I have the screen back, so this was our 0 to 1 to get started. So if you guys, what Connor just showed you, here is it. Here is how we started. This is it in Word. This is it. You guys can actually take this and use this as a checklist. And so I also divided up amongst team members you're going to need. So I'm assuming if you're starting out and it's just you're going to start out as the acquisitionist. So you're going to need, the roles you're going to need is the acquisitionist, the transaction coordinator. By the way, this would be the first person I'd probably hire if you want to do more than one of this, a transaction coordinator. You're going to need to be the rehab coordinator and GC. You're going to have to remain the owner and have approvals and final steps. And then finally, you're going to have a dispositions guy and a bookkeeper. So when you're first starting out of this, you are going to be 6 roles. But I figure we would just kind of go. It's a workshop, so we'll just kind of go step by step. Any questions, any comments? We'll just go ahead and ask. But so step 1, you got to find a house. Step 2, perform the property walk, confirm condition and fill out the eval. That's what that spreadsheet's for. Step 3, run the numbers, the initial numbers we started this call off with. Determine your ARV. If it's a rental, determine your rent range. Then use the analyzer to get your estimated repairs. If, like I said earlier, if the asking price is under the Mayo, get the property under contract. If it's not under the Mayo, you either follow up, kill the deal, or renegotiate. If the offer is accepted, you have the property under contract, that triggers a bunch of other tasks because now you kind of got to go to work. So the owner, you guys will decide the disposition strategy, retail, turnkey, Berkey. Then once you're buying it, transaction and rehab phases, the acquisitionist got to fill out some more work, but access info, seller contact info, contract date. And so what I imagine is you guys would use this and you'd have all this data in here. So you wouldn't have to be searching around for a bunch of info you're going to need eventually. The inspection period deadline, earnest money deadline. Next, you would need to initiate your insurance quote, find the lender, create the note of deed and trust. You guys know how to do this because of the private lending workshop. Send wiring instructions, 72 hours prior to close, make sure title has money, receive and sign all closing docs. Boom, you actually own the house. At this point, hey, Connor, do you have anything you could show them on the closing day activities?
Yeah, so actually it's embedded in our process, but I can put in a doc and send it out later. But essentially what they do is go to the property. Obviously, you want to get the keys to that property before you go there, either from title. Oftentimes, the easiest thing is we just ask the seller to just leave it someplace on that property, underneath the doormat thing or whatever. We get out there very rapidly, so we minimize risk that way. But title is obviously the most common. Get the keys, go out there. We rekey all the locks on a new lock set. That way, if anyone associated with the property in the past or we bought it from someone who was flipping it, we know that we have secure keys to all the actual doors of the property. Obviously lock any windows. Utilities, we generally turn the water off once we get there. If the furnace is working, we're going to set it within that range. And then obviously pictures of the entire house so that we, have confirmation of what the full condition of that property is. Lately, what we've been doing is we're also putting security cameras because we have had a number of break-ins and stuff like that, depending on where you're at. So long story short, secure the property, make sure the utilities are ordered. There's not going to be, you don't want to leave that property and have a pipe burst. So turning off that water, setting the thermostat within the proper range, taking pictures to get the initial condition of the house. And then I'd say at that point, you're pretty much good.
But so that is something, when I've done flipping courses, no one's telling them, hey, here's everything you better do the day you buy it. Because if you just buy it and no one secures the house, you're in a bad spot. At that point, you probably, so you bought it at this point, so you should have at least a base scope because your due diligence is over. But you need to get, if you need any of these trades, HVAC, roofer, sewer lateral, GC, electrician, plumber, get them started on their bids. I need to change this up a little bit and get this bid package done before you buy the house. So I'll fix that. Sorry, guys. Collect bids and assignments, create the scope of work, create the budget, buy the house. So sorry, this is a little out of order. I'll fix this. You as the owner, you're going to approve the scope or renegotiate, set the final project, green light the project. So if you're going to use our system of the 4 phases, the first people you're going to green light is your demo, your clean out crews, and then all your trades. Because like I said, we want all the trades to be done before we start painting and putting flooring down. Because if the plumber's busting up walls after you've painted, you're in a bad spot. So confirm the purchase of the house, do the closing day activities, green light the mechanical subs, request finish and start date from GC, add your property to your property list. If you're tracking that, send note of deed of trust, the executed one, to the private lender, add the lender to the lender payment tracker, whatever you're using to track how much money you have out. Give bookkeeper a copy of the HUD, green light the GC. And so you're going to probably wait 1 to 2 weeks to get all the mechanicals greenlit. Once you have confirmed all the mechanicals greenlit, pay your mech guys. If demo's done, and everything's ready to go, you say, hey, good job, Mr. GC. Here's your phase 1 payment. Next, you wait for phase 2 to get done. So the painting and the flooring gets done. This is actually the easiest part. Once you're to phase 2, then I would start calling your dispo agent, or if you're going to make it a rental, I would start calling your leasing agent and say, this thing's about getting close to being ready. Pay phase 2 once it's done. They get the kitchens, they get the bathrooms done. Pay phase 3. At the end of phase 3, that's when if there's occupancy inspection where you're at, then we schedule the occupancy because we want people under the gun to get that phase 4 done. Once the GC says phase 4 done, owner complete, then you need to walk the projects. By the way, if you're doing this on your own, when you first start, I would be asking for pics often because technically you're going to be the GC. So I'd be going there at least twice a week. Definitely have to hit it once a week and make sure work is continuing to go. When you give them the final thing, you go through your scope and like everything is correct, then you give them their final payment. If it doesn't pass inspection, you give them the punch list, tell them to do it again. And then the process repeats. You do the final walk. And then when they're finally done, that's when you actually give them their final payment. And then once it's done, here in this tab, we give you your dispo paperwork. Fill out all this stuff for your friendly MLS agent. They'll list the house. Then you sit and wait to sell the house. So, in an hour and 15 minutes, that's how you flip a house. So I went through a lot of stuff really fast. Any comments or questions out there?
I like the pay you to do it model.
Yeah, right. What if something goes wrong? Like, let's say you originally walk through, you build out the project, and turns out, it's going to be more expensive, or once they pull a wall or something like that and do some demo, it's worse than. So how would you re-engage? What does that look like with the contractors? Do you have any documentation that you can provide?
Do you want me to talk through that maybe, Jimmy?
Yeah, that'd be great, Connor.
I just want to make sure I understand your question. So basically, what are the steps we do both in terms of contractor or with owner if we're flipping it for someone else? Well, how does that situation generally look if that were to occur?
Yeah, I was thinking of the first 2 that we did. We found later that there was some termite damage, right? And it wasn't originally in our scope. And, so we hadn't really budgeted for that as well. And I was wondering if you have any worksheets or, do you normally project that it's going to be 10% higher than what you originally put in all of your documentation? Do you build in for those things, I guess, is my question.
So we don't necessarily build it into that estimate that we send to the contractors. We build it into the Mayo. So you take that Mayo and I basically fudge it a little bit to give us a little bit of extra room. So on the construction side, it'll look like not as good because, we went over on the construction, but on the actual flipping portion, that's kind of where that's built into. So I know with a lot of lenders, if we're doing flips for other people, they'll make us add an extra 10% to it. That way the lender has blocked off, if it's $30,000, they blocked off 33,000. And then when those change orders occur, you say what it's for, they ask obviously for invoices and things like that to confirm what it was. I mean, depending on what system you use, we'll basically say either contractor or one of our PMs will go through and walk it and say, hey, here's another issue. we say we'll send them a bid package, but that's just a way of saying, hey, what do you think this thing's going to cost? Review it internally to make sure that, you know, the I's dot and the T's crossed, that it makes sense what is it they're doing. If it's an internal rehab, then obviously we'll approve that, get it scheduled. I think the example I pulled up, there was a change order to paint the exterior. We thought at the start of it that we didn't maybe have to. And then just through the course of the rehab, from PMs looking at a contractor, be like, it looked okay at the start. Oftentimes what happens is if the house is really, if it's a so-so house, you might think you don't have to do something. But then when you do everything else, it just sticks out, you know? So you might look at a bathroom, a tile in the bathroom or kitchen, and be like, oh, it's fine, you know, just clean it up or whatever. But then when you paint the house, do a new floors, put in a new countertop, then that backsplash that looked really good at the start will look really bad at the end. So now obviously we get better at that over time and know that. But if that does happen, yeah, you know, there's a best spot to do that is obviously before sometime between phase 2 and phase 3. So we do get a lot of change orders in phase 1 because as we're demoing stuff, especially a lot of plumbing stuff, there's a lot of behind the wall things that you just can't see. You know, the stacks will go up, you know, through the basement. There might not be utilities on at the property before you do it. So, you know, you can't run the water, you can't run the power, you may not know those things. So, you know, you are taking a little bit of risk, especially if it's one with no utilities. You can maybe expect those a little bit maybe a little bit higher on the end of the change orders. And then obviously if it's something you're doing external, obviously having to call the owner and give them all that information, let them know what's going on and stuff. But to answer the main part of your question, I would factor that more so into the purchase price, you know, necessarily. I mean, you're doing the same thing. It's just you're doing it from kind of 2 different angles. But generally, yeah, on that purchase price, I'm fudging it at least 10% over what I think we might actually have to spend on it. The other thing is that depending on what kind of property it is, if it's like 100-year-old property, I'm gonna bet on more change orders just from experience. Those are always going to be higher. If it's the bread and butter ones that you know Jimmy was primarily talking about, ones built in the 70s, you kind of know what to expect. As soon as you get into 100, 105-year-old properties, that's when I can see, especially 2 stories or something like that, that's when I can see change orders spike.
And then the other thing to be cognizant of is, when was the last time water actually ran through that house? And if it's been longer than 6 months, it's going to be a different rehab. Like, when was the last time utilities were actually on? Not just water, electric, plumbing, everything. Like, when the stuff's not on, everything starts to fall apart.
We will also always budget a very common change order, because if we're doing that initial eval, that guy doesn't have a drain and lateral scope. That will come later. But he's looking at the age of the property. You can look in a basement floor and tell if a lateral replacement has occurred or not. You'll see that new concrete patch. So the instructions are, hey, if you're looking at a property that's 50 years old and the stack is cast iron and you don't see any sign of a repair, I would say 4 times out of 5, you're going to need to do some kind of lateral repair on there. And we just factor that in from the beginning. That's like doing on the cautious end. Maybe things are actually fine. But based upon the age of the house and just other signs, even if utilities aren't on, there's other kind of telltale indicators that you might have to, you know, increase that budget there a little bit.
Normally order a termite report.
Yep. So there are companies, again, they're on our vendors list, that if there is something like that, most of the times it's old, that's been treated before, but that just because there's been that change of ownership, there's been a lack of documentation. But either way, obviously owners, that's a huge concern if that word pops up on something. So we'll still send out a, you know, termite company an evaluation, maybe $200, $250 for them to fully evaluate that property.
Right.
And now, if there are signs of termite damage, obviously you factor in as much as you think is necessary and start with that inspection so they can identify all the parts that they would recommend needing replaced. But yeah, anything like a termite foundation, and some structural things, those are ones where we'd want to bring in either a structural engineer, a certified actual foundation repair company to actually take a look at that. Something that you don't really want a generalist looking at that. You probably do want a specialist.
Right. Okay.
And then when you guys are first starting out, I would definitely get a third-party inspector just to go through the whole house. You know, we kind of cowboy up because we have to because of speed. Although Joe Buyer would love it if we did a full inspection on each house. But I would definitely send a third-party inspector just to make sure the bones are solid.
Joe's giving a thumbs up. Any other questions on, like Jimmy said, we kind of did go fast. So anything that kind of stuck out to you, either how we've done it, situations we've run into before, that can kind of that anything sparked any questions?
Spencer, somebody's already done it before. Did we give any value?
Yeah, no, tons of value. I wish I had this class like a year ago, but you guys are dialed in for sure. All the systems that you have in place are great. We just kind of fudged ours as we went. And like you said, we were hoping we're like, if we make 5,000 on this, at least we learned, but we ended up getting lucky and just having experience in having a little bit of background in construction and that stuff. But no, this is all great for someone who has no idea. I can't imagine how much this would have helped going into our project, and we probably would have profited more if we would have had any of this, a lot more.
Sweet. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
We'll kind of move into like masterminding or the masterminding / questions or anything going on, type of stuff. Leasing season starting, leasing team's on fire. The market is starting to loosen up. So our houses on market's picking up. This is the best March through, November is real estate season. So we've braved the winter and coming into the fun times. If no comments or questions after that, let's go enjoy the weekend. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.